to have parents join us tonight for our kindergarten applications event. I want to introduce parent leaders that are on this with us, just to recognize them right out at the onset. We have Deborah Alexander, who is a District 30 CC member, as well as a Place E-Board member. We have Craig Slutskin, who is on the CC 22, which is City Education Council in Manhattan.
CC2.
CC 2.
Sorry.
Did I say something?
22.
Oh, 22. No, CC 2. And also the treasurer for Place NYC. We have Hunter Dare joining us, and he is on CC 30. And we have Lisa Marks, a parent leader at PS 77 Lower Lab in Manhattan. So with that said, I am going to share the screen and get this kicked off. There we go. All right, so we just did the introduction of the parent panel. What we'll have tonight is a short presentation of the kindergarten application process, including the G&T process. We're going to answer some submitted questions that we received in the past week, and then we will open it up for questions from all the attendees here. We've done that. So Craig, do I turn it over to you to start doing this? Thank you.
Sure. So we'll start off on some key dates that many of you may have seen already. The kindergarten application already opened. It opened up on December 5th, and you have to apply by January 19th. And that's a hard deadline. I don't know that they will be extending that, but you will probably get a lot of reminders anyway from your if you're in the system already, from the parent coordinator of your school if you're in pre-K. But nonetheless, you need to apply by Friday, January 19th. So we have a little bit of time. The offer release is Wednesday, March 27th. So you will know where your child got into. And if there's waiting lists, you will find out where you are on the waiting list. The process is as such. You have to open a My School account. So there's a website that you can open up, your My School. If you're in the system already, you already should have a My School account. And if you need help with that, your parent coordinator should be able to do that. But you can open that up on your own as well, I believe. And what you should be doing right now, or think about doing right now, thank you, Deb. Deb put the website in the chat. You should be starting to look at schools. You can research schools online. So you can go on the DOE website, you can put in your address, and you can see all the schools that are near you. But you could also filter if you want specific programs, like a gifted and talented program, what programs would be in your district, for example. Most schools have open houses, so you can go, and hopefully they're in person. I know at my son's school, it's in person. So you should look on the school's website or call individual schools up if you don't see it on the website to see when the open house is and if you need to sign up, which you probably will need to sign up for that ahead of time. But it's good to go to the open house because at the open houses, you'll meet the staff, you'll meet the principal, the assistant principal, you'll see some teachers, and hopefully you'll see some parents as well and have an opportunity to speak to them to see what they like about the school and what makes their school special. Also at the open house, they'll take you on a tour so you can take a look and see what is important, what winds up being important to you. Does it have a nice yard? Does it have a lunchroom? Is it sunny? Is the building 100 years old or is it 10 years old? And you'll find that there are going to be things that are important to you that you may not have thought were important to you. So it's always good to see, to go in and take a look at it. One other thing I like to do when I looked at open houses and I took the tour is I like to look at the bulletin boards to see what the children were putting up on the bulletin boards and the type of work that they were doing. On the application process, you can put up to 12 programs. Now, currently, this isn't what it used to be, but currently, it's one application process for both general education, or Gen Ed, we'll call it Gen Ed, and the G&T program. So you'll list them all together, but you can apply to up to 12 programs. You don't have to apply for all 12, but you can, and in many cases, you probably should, just in case. and your students. And there are different priorities within admissions, and we're going to go through that today. But where you live is important in terms of your priority. Are you zoned or have you have geographic priority? If you're zoned for a school, you'll get a higher priority. My son goes to the school down the block from me. I'm in the zone, so I would have priority for someone. I live in Manhattan. I would have priority for my child had a priority over someone who's from a different district, didn't live in the zone, or someone who lived in a different borough. He got priority. There's also priorities if if your child has a sibling already at the school. That's important. The Department of Education feels that it's important for children to be together, the siblings to be together, for a whole bunch of reasons. And part of it is, quite frankly, the convenience of the families, not having to take one child to one school at one side of the neighborhood and then another child to another school at the other side of the neighborhood. It becomes very, very challenging. Family income, English language learners, and students with temporary housing. And that's the alphabet. ELL stands for English language learners. STH are students in temporary housing. Low student incomes may qualify for what's called diversity in admissions. Some schools have priorities or set-asides for students who qualify in one of these categories, because we do want to get diversity in the schools and allow for students of many different backgrounds to come into the school. Now, what could happen in some schools will have a very high demand of students. There will be you will have a lottery number. We're going to talk about in a little bit how you can get your lottery number. But every student is assigned a lottery number, and when there are more applicants than seats, the lottery number will determine which student are prioritized or get the seats, and which students do not or get onto the waiting list. And here, kindergarten program priorities, again, it's sibling, then zone district, and then diversity in admissions. And there's priority in some schools for applicants eligible for free or reduced lunch pricing, and that's based upon family income that you report, or English language learners after the zone students are admitted. Now, English language learners, I believe, is self-reported. I don't think that you have to take a test or anything. I mean, I know you don't have to take a test. That's self-reported. You can designate yourself as that. Priority is also given to applicants who are eligible, as we said on this previous slide, for free or reduced price lunch, and that's based upon family income that you report, or applicants living in temporary housing, public housing, or ELL students, and that's 30% of the seats. And more information is in that link.
So I think that's, thank you, Craig. And Hunter, I think you are going to take us through the next two slides.
Yes, surely. So I want to talk briefly about the gifted and talented process. So what's important and what's changed from 2 years ago and for many years before that is that G&T admissions is an integrated process along with general ed admissions. So used to you listed general G&T schools separately. Now you list them as part of your up to 12 choices on your regular gen ed application. There are two kinds of gifted and talented programs that are available to kindergartners. There's another kind that's available for older kids as well. But there are either district or citywide programs. The main difference is district programs have guaranteed admission, well, not guaranteed admissions, but give priority to people that are within the district. And citywide programs, anybody can apply to them and has equal priority after any priorities such as siblings or diversity and admissions priorities that those schools have. The other thing is that the citywide schools are all exclusively gifted and talented students. There are no general education students at those schools. Most all of the district programs have a mix of some classrooms that are general ed and some classrooms that are G&T. There's at least one, and there may be 2 or 3 programs around the city that are district programs that are exclusively gifted and talented programs, one of them being PS 77 Lower Lab in District 2. The application, the way that you get evaluated for being in gifted and talented has changed as well. So previously, there was a test that every pre-K student that was interested in a kindergarten seat took, and that is no longer. Now it is based on teacher recommendations. And so if you list any single gifted and talented program, or if you list 11 gifted and talented programs on your application, it will trigger your pre-K teacher to evaluate your child for gifted and talented. The teachers are being trained this year. In the past, there's been less training, but they are being trained this year, many of them, not all of them, in identifying gifted students. But they have all been given kind of a rubric as well to use to identify gifted behaviors. And so that's the way your child qualifies. Some teachers, we have heard, qualify every student who has an application. There are also rumors, and we don't have this confirmed, that there are some teachers that do not believe in gifted and talented and have qualified nobody. So I would highly recommend that if you put a gifted and talented program on your application, that you ask your teacher about their recommendations at some point. I wouldn't be pushy about it and say your kid needs to be recommended and that they're so bright, etc., but that you try to get a feel for that teacher. And if they tell you that they don't think anybody is gifted and talented, then you need to bring that to the attention of principals and to your CEC. You could bring it to attention of place, and we will do everything that we can do to help you, because that shouldn't be happening where a teacher refuses to recommend anybody. Factors for G&T placement. The first priority in G&T programs, similar to Gen Ed programs, is sibling priority. So siblings are placed before any other students. There are also DIA set-asides, and those set-asides vary depending on the G&T program as to what percentage are set aside for diversity in admissions. And I don't know if any of them have no set-asides. Many of them do have some kind of set-aside, but it could be as little as 12.5%. It could be up in the 70% range, and it depends on the district and the school. The third thing that is important is your lottery number. And the DOE has told us that every G&T seat for kindergarten was filled last year. So lottery numbers always come into play. I think Craig said that we're going to be talking about those a little bit later on, so I won't get into the intricacies of the lottery number. But suffice to say that if you have a very high lottery number, you have a much better chance of getting into a G&T program. If you have a very low lottery number, it may be a stretch. However, for wait list, our understanding is that you get a new lottery number. So even if you have a bad lottery number, you could end up getting different lottery numbers for each wait list that you're on. And so if you end up on a G&T wait list, you do still have some kind of chance to get into that program. The citywide schools take very few people off the wait list because people tend to accept those seats. But the district programs, some of them may take a lot of kids off the wait list. G&T stats. So in District 30, we have specific numbers, and District 30 is a very diverse district that's fairly representative of the DOE as a whole, but we had 771 kindergarten G&T applicants in District 30 last year. Of those, 674 of the applicants were deemed eligible. So that's kind of what we're also hearing from other districts as well, though we don't have exact numbers from other districts. Most teachers are recommending most kids that apply for G&T. And we ended up with 142 offers in the first round. That doesn't count people that received offers off the wait list. But, that's 21% of all the kids. So, basically 1 in 4 of the kids that were deemed eligible were eventually given an offer in the first round. Your chances of getting an offer in a school really are dependent on what district you are in and what school you're talking about. Some schools have huge demand where there are 20 plus people putting that school in their list for every seat that there are. There are other schools and other districts where there are far fewer applicants for those programs. Usually in your kind of higher income districts or districts that have some very high income neighborhoods, you tend to see a lot more parents that are looking for G&T programs. In other districts, sometimes charters are the kind of more popular choice for people that are looking for more rigorous education. And so the G&T programs may be easier to get into in some of those districts. And I will turn it back to you, Yaten. Or am I going through lottery numbers as well?
You can, Hunter, please.
Okay. So every student is assigned a random lottery number by the DOE. And maybe somebody can help me on this because I haven't seen the current My Schools for kindergarten, but is the lottery number listed on the kindergarten in My Schools?
Yes. It's under just like for middle school and high school students, it's part of their profile. So
part of your profile.
yes, it started last year they had it, and I'm sure this year, I haven't seen one this year, but I know last year they had it already.
Right. So you'll get a lottery number, and it is a hexadecimal number, which means that the kind of highest or top number in this hexadecimal system, or the first number in the system, is 0. It goes up 0 through 9, and then it starts A, B, C, D, E, F. And those are the 16 numbers. An F being kind of the last number or lowest number in the lottery. That makes 0, 0. Really what's only relevant is kind of your first 2 numbers in your lottery number to kind of tell how high up you are. And really the first number tells you most of it. A 0 means you're in the top 6.25%. A 1 means you're in the next 6.25%, 2 the next 6.25%, etc. The second number kind of divides up that 6% into 16 parts. So, if you're in a 0, 0, you're in the top 0.4%. And if you're at 0.4%, if you have a 0, 1, you're in the top 0.8%, and so on, so on. So really the first 2 digits tell you exactly where you are. There's a site that a woman, Amelie Marianne, put together on Medium, and it's called Algorithms in the Wild. If you kind of take a snapshot of this link here, you can go there and they will have this lottery number chart that you see on the slides, which you can look up the first 2 digits of your lottery number, and it'll tell you percentage-wise how high your lottery number is. And lower numbers are more likely. And the way that lottery numbers work is it's not like each school has its own lottery. A lottery number is really just the order that your application is considered. So the person with a 00 number, 00000, they're going to be the very first application that is considered, and they will give them their first choice that they qualify for. So if you put a citywide gifted and talented program first, then you're going to get assigned there because you're the very first person in the system, and they're going to keep going down until some schools on somebody's application, their first choice is filled, and then they'll go to look at that application's second choice, and they'll say, can I place them there? Are there seats in that school? If so, yes. The third choice, if the first and second one are filled, they'll look at the third choice and say, is the child eligible for this school? For instance, do they have the district priority? Do they have the recommendation for G&T? et cetera? Do they have the sibling priority? And if they are eligible for that school and it's on their application, they will get placed there at the highest choice that's on their application, or their highest preference. Now, the way it works with these different priority groups and the lottery number is basically they run through all the applications first, and they basically just look at your top priority, or the top priority group for schools. So they're saying, first, we're going to go through and we're going to place all the siblings. And then we're going to go through and we're going to place all the diversity and admissions kids as well. And then we're going to go through and we're going to place all the people eligible for G&T, for instance. And so they're going to run through those. So you may get a provisional placement in the first round. So say you have a sibling that's at a particular school, but it's not your first choice for this kid. You want to put some gifted and talented schools ahead of that school. They'll provisionally place you at your sixth choice where you have sibling priority. And then when they go back through and run through the applications again, and they look at second priorities and third priorities of schools, and you qualify for one of those higher priorities, then they'll move you out of your sixth choice and move you up into your first choice. All of this is invisible to you, and it all happens over a single night that they run the algorithm. But that's basically how that works. An important thing here is that lottery numbers essentially break ties, because if you have 3 seats left when you get to a certain lottery, if you have 3 seats left when you get to somebody's application, they're going to get placed there. And then the next person is going to get placed there. And the third person that has that school listed as their top priority is going to get placed there. The next person down, that seat's gone. They had a lower lottery number. Their application was considered at a later point in time than the persons that were above them. So essentially, lottery numbers break ties if you have equal priority or you're in an equal priority group.
Hi. Okay. So I'm going to take over from Hunter about what should the next steps be as a parent applying for a kindergarten seat. What should I do now? First, I would definitely recommend to research the schools at this point. You can, let me, I was looking at the different citywide programs of G&T, and schools do have on their website whether or not they're having a tour date coming up in January. So if you were totally on the ball and maybe you've already taken some of the tours did start in the fall, in October, November, December at some schools, but you should definitely go to each school's website and look up on their website if they are going to have a tour coming up. And that is not a centralized system. So parents need to go to individual school websites that they're interested in. If you're interested in Nest, you should go to the Nest website. And I can tell you, because I'm looking at it right now, that the tours for Nest, they were self-guided tours. I went on one myself because I had a middle schooler this year. A fifth grader applying for middle school. So the Nest tours are already done for this cycle. But they do have virtual information and virtual tours listed on their website. So that is for Nest. You'd have to go check for Anderson if you're interested in Anderson. Anderson does have a tour coming up on January 10th and another one on January 17th. I think you need to register. No registration is required, I'm seeing on their website. And those are in-person tours if you're interested in Anderson. Same with TAG or Q300. I think both TAG and Q300 only have virtual tours on their website posted right now, but reach out to the parent coordinators of every school that you're interested in. See if they can be flexible, see what they can tell you about the schools. And if there's a way, an opportunity to set up a tour, I would highly recommend that, as Craig also mentioned earlier. And then you can also use the local Facebook groups that you may be a part of. So join groups if you're in Manhattan, in Brooklyn, in the Bronx, wherever you're located, join local Facebook groups, parent groups, and ask questions about the schools. Obviously, talk to other parents. You may know kids from the neighborhood and parents from the neighborhood who are at local schools or different programs. And also, we have had school parents at, I'm a parent at Lower Lab, and we've had parents come to Lower Lab in the mornings as the kids are arriving, prospective parents who want to find out more. And parents have approached me and said, you know, I'm thinking about Lower Lab for my child next year. Can you tell me a little bit about Lower Lab? So don't be afraid to do that. If you can go to the school, even if, for example, Lower Lab does not have a tour coming up, they only have virtual tours. Lower Lab actually only does a tour after you are admitted, after you are accepted. If you get a seat in the springtime, they would have a tour. But parents, prospective parents do come to school drop-off time if you can make it. You know, I know it's busy for parents, but that's another way that you could come to the school at 8 a.m., talk to the parents as they're waiting to drop off their kids. You know, I know it's a busy time, but it's another way that you might find other connections and ask questions about the schools that you're interested in. But again, you have to check the individual websites. It's not a centralized system, so any individual school that you're interested in, you need to reach out to those specific schools. Okay, next. Once you go on a tour, and I agree with Craig, you get a sense of the school, you look at the bulletin boards, you look at the kids in the classrooms, are they engaged in learning? But here are some questions that you may want to ask. So I had a kindergartner apply last year, and my kindergartner had sibling priority because I have older students already at Lower Lab. So I didn't really have to ask all these questions because I do know about the school, but these are questions that are a lot of parents are thinking about in 2023. There's a new literacy curriculum that's being rolled out next year citywide. It's more phonics-based literacy curriculum. So you may want to ask the school, how is that being rolled out in the lower grades? Give me some specific examples. You know, how are teachers incorporating phonics or different types of literacy instruction into the school day? Number two, how many ICT classrooms are there? ICT classrooms are co-teaching classrooms. That's when you have two teachers in the classroom. They do have some students that have special needs in those classrooms, but they are often have a lower student to teacher ratio because you do have two teachers at the same time. So it makes it a smaller group work more possible. Number three, if it's a GNT, if there is a GNT program at a school or it's a GNT school, how is that GNT curriculum different than just the regular gen ed classes? So some GNT district programs, let's say, they don't really differ in curriculum in terms of the pace. They're doing things at the same pace. They're all studying second grade math at the same time, but the GNT program within that school may do deeper project-based work that students can go deeper into the learning on that curriculum. That's some kinds of GNTs. Other GNTs are less project-based, but may be more accelerated in terms of their pacing. So for example, Lower Lab, the math instruction is 1 year ahead of the general ed classes, meaning that it's the same math that you get throughout New York City, but my fifth grader is doing sixth grade math instead of doing what in the general ed class would be the fifth grade work. My third grader is working on fourth grade math. So that's an accelerated program. Number four, how much homework is there nightly? This is a big one just to get a feel for what is, parents love it because we can see what they're working on during the day. What's coming home at night? You can talk to your child about that. You can make sure that they're understanding and grasping the material. And it's, you know, I think it's good study habits that are being built, time management habits, and ability for students to take ownership of their own work. So you would want to ask how much homework is there. Maybe that's something you don't prioritize. Maybe your student has a lot of extracurriculars and you know that they're not going to have time for a nightly homework. Does the school give packets that are once a week, or is it daily? Ask questions about the homework, because that, is part of your family's schedule and lifestyle. Other questions like, do the teachers incorporate trips into the units of study? I think that we live in New York City. There's many, many opportunities for trips. How could that add to learning, whether it's going to museums or not? Other schools don't really do a lot of trips. Number 6, what are some of the enrichment and specialty programs at the schools? So do they have a science teacher? Not every school does have a science teacher. Do they have a library? A lot of schools don't have libraries or librarians. I know Lower Lab does not have a library. The school my kids were at before Lower Lab did have a library. So, I don't think there's any perfect school out there that has everything on your list that you're looking for, but you have to prioritize what is the most meaningful parts of your child's education. You know your child the best. So if they want specialty and enrichment programs such as music or dance or other science programs, chess programs, whatever it may be, ask questions about those things to see if the school that you're looking at would be compatible. What after-school programs are available? Some schools have after-school programs that are more, I would say, like more budget friendly, and some schools don't. Some schools after-school programs, and it varies even within a school. Some programs are stronger than others. Some programs are more popular than others. But is there something available? Because, as a parent, it's very hard to pick up your child every day at 2:30. So you want to make sure that you have some kind of aftercare coverage if you need it. And then as a parent, how often are parents invited to participate in school life and events, if that's important to you? Is there a winter concert? Is there a musical performance or a theater performance at the school? Those are great ways to be part of your child's education. And if that's something that's important to you, definitely ask about that. And then I would finally recommend, if you're talking to the principal or the assistant principal, what do you want me to remember most about this school? What is kind of, the overarching theme of the school, or what does that school prioritize the most? For example, at Lower Lab, the principal will definitely tell you Lower Lab is an accelerated school. You will have homework nightly, so be prepared for those things. And if you choose that program and you get into that program, those are the expectations. So definitely ask what you want the principal to remember about the school, what the principal should want you to remember about the school. And now I guess we are up to the question and answer portion.
Hey everyone, my name is Deborah Alexander. I'm a CEC 30 member. I have a lot of questions that you all submitted via the Google form. We also have a bunch of questions in the chat that I haven't gotten to answer yet. A lot of them are probably ones you're all thinking of. So I'm going to go through the submitted questions first, and then we can hopefully get to some that are in the chat as well. The first question I have, we are currently living in Staten Island, and my son is studying at a pre-K in Staten Island. I just bought a new house in Brooklyn and am ready to move in July 2024. And my son needs to go to a Brooklyn zoned kindergarten. So I need to update my address to Brooklyn and then submit the application form for kindergarten. The problem is that the elementary school can't help me update the address of the school to the new address in Brooklyn because my son is still studying in Staten Island. Now I can only log into my schools to update the address to Brooklyn and then submit the kindergarten application for my son. What exactly can I do to make sure that my son can get into his own school in September in Brooklyn in 2024? So that's a very, very specific question, but I think it's also fairly universal in terms of what do you do when you have a very specific question? Who would like to take that, or I can. since no one is jumping in, I would say this is a question for your Family Welcome Center. If you have not heard of the Family Welcome Center, every borough, and some boroughs have two. Brooklyn and Queens have a North and South Family Welcome Center. I'm sorry. Every district has a Family Welcome Center. And so you can look that up online, find your district's Family Welcome Center, and they will open up a file, a case on your specific question and your specific need. They are sort of the in between the DOE central and the parents. So I would go directly to them and tell them exactly what you're saying, and they can often bypass the My School system. I'm going to also put an email address in the chat. It's the direct email to the elementary school application process, elementary school application people at Central. You can feel free to ask them. They've got people monitoring, and they're not always the quickest to answer, but any enrollment questions for applying to kindergarten, that would be the place to email.
Deborah, I'm going to add, because I went through that process. So if you have a deed, if you have a lease of the place that you know you're going to be moving to, that is something that the Family Welcome Center will ask you for to help you, put you in the right zone school that your child will be going to. So they will be asking you for your residential documentation. So just be ready for that.
All right, next question. I plan to apply to a citywide G&T program as my first choice, and then an out of zone, but in district school as my second choice. But that does not have a G&T program. However, it's very popular with parents, many of whom are trying to get in from out of the zone. We have a pretty good lottery number, so I'm wondering, by putting another school as the top choice, am I effectively giving up a spot at the second choice with a popular but out of zone school? There's another question there, but I'm going to pause and let someone answer that. Hunter is
yeah. So the way it works, because the lottery number is basically just your place in line, putting a school second doesn't diminish your chances of getting that school, except to the extent that you get your first choice. So, it comes up, and when your number comes up in line, or your place comes in line, they're going to say, did you get your first choice? If your first choice was not available, then they're going to say, can I give them their second choice? And the system will be glad to give you that choice, and you in no way diminish your chances at that second school by putting another school first. In fact, even if you have a school listed 12th, it does not diminish your chances of getting that school because you listed it low on your application. The schools never see the order that you put those schools in.
And the second part of that question is basically the same answer that Hunter just gave. Am I more likely to get a citywide G&T program that is ranked first than a district G&T program out of zone, but in district ranked second or third? So I think Hunter's answer absolutely applies. You rank in your true order of preference. There is no gaming, where you rank. It's not that kind of a match. Anybody? All right. We'll move on to the next question. I do not feel comfortable sending my son to our zone school. I'd like to apply for a school in my district, but not zoned for me. What are the chances of getting picked? I hear there are more seats available since COVID. And for G&T programs, the citywide G&T school and non-zone students who'd like to attend a different school, how is the lottery handled? Anybody? Go ahead.
I'll answer part of that on the G&T, and maybe somebody else can offer the first part. But so citywide G&T programs, there are 300 seats total. There are approximately 20,000 plus people that submit at least one G&T school on their application. And if we say maybe 75%, we saw 87% get recommended in District 30. Even if it's 75%, citywide, we're talking about 15,000 people are eligible. How many of those put a citywide on their application? You know, it's impossible to say because the DOE doesn't say on kinder applications the way they do on high school applications, for instance, how many applications per seat there are. But I'm sure that number is 5,000 plus for 300 seats. So unless you have an extremely good lottery number, you're not going to get into a citywide school on the regular admissions, on the first round of admissions. It is still worth placing those on your application if you have extra spaces on your 12, because you do get a new number for the wait list. But just understand that you're not going to get a first round seat there.
And just to add on to that, someone had asked about waitlist movement, and I answered in the chat. With district programs and zoned programs, you will see a fair amount of movement. In my 10 years experience, I have not seen a ton of movement for citywides. There will be some attrition, people move, there's all sorts of reasons, but less so on the citywide front and more so on the district G&T seats and your zone school seats. But that there you will see movement up until the end of October.
And Deborah, just to add on to that, you know, this past fall, my daughter started kindergarten, and actually I was surprised because she did get a placement at Lower Lab where her siblings go to school, but then she also got called off the wait list for TAG and Q300. And that was very surprising. So maybe she had one of those wait list numbers that happened to be very good. But you know, it can happen. So don't think that you shouldn't rank a school. You're not going to lose anything by putting all the citywides on your application if you want to, because there is a chance that in the waitlist process, you may get a different number, and that may help you, you know, get your chances into a higher position for the waitlist. So actually, we did have 2 offers from 2 different citywides this past fall.
Yeah, that's great advice. Yeah, absolutely. You have enough choices that that you can, generally speaking, you can spare to put them. There's no harm in putting them, certainly.
Did we fully answer the question? What was the first?
Yeah, the first part of it was sort of a likelihood of getting an in-district but out-of-zone seat. And yes, that is going to vary incredibly based on your district and how crowded your schools are. So something you can do to get a sense of it, like Hunter said, the DOE doesn't list applicants per seat, but you can see how many sections you can ask at the school. How many sections of kindergarten are there at this school? Some schools have 2, some schools have 6. So you'll know how many available seats. You can ask at the school, say how many out-of-zone kids did they take, because you might not have zone priority, but you might be in a district where that doesn't matter too much because of available seats. So it varies absolutely widely based on where you are, but feel free to ask these questions of the school you're interested in. They have that information.
Yeah, and a great resource to get that information if you haven't been able to go to the open houses, or you can't go to all of your district's open houses, is to email the parent coordinators at the schools. Most of them are pretty responsive to people, and they should be able to tell you if they took out of zone kids in the last year, for instance.
So this is a very, very specific question for PS 77. What is a typical PTA budget of PS? Well, it's interesting that it's asked this way because that's important. What is the typical budget of PS 77 G&T program? How do they deploy it? Well, I'll stop there.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that about the budget for the PTA?
Yes. What is a typical PTA budget of PS 77 G&T program?
I mean, as a parent of PS 77, we do have a strong PTA. A lot of parents are donating money. We raise some money through different events throughout the school year. There's an annual gala. The money that is raised goes to funding the music teacher at Lower Lab, different specialty programs, such as there's a debate program in 5th grade. There's a drama program is in 4th grade. So grade specific programs. The PTA budget also goes to professional development of the teachers and other things of that nature. I don't know the exact number of what we have in terms of funding. I'm not the treasurer of the PTA, so I don't know that exact number. Maybe Hunter, you might remember.
I don't remember offhand. I mean, they raise great amounts of money for a small school, but it's certainly not like what some of the bigger schools are able to raise.
Right. It's a small school. So, there's only about 60-ish kids per grade. So keep that in mind. It's not as big as other schools out there.
And I said that it was an interesting question because many/most of the district G&T programs are one class on a grade. So funds raised in PTAs go to the whole school. They don't just go to the G&T program. It's important to know. Whereas the Citywides, everybody is G&T there, so that would be a whole school PTA. But it's definitely something to think about. The question goes on to say, what are 1 or 2 things about PS77 that differentiates it from other G&T programs? For example, some schools tout that they have a great program in art or debate or science or math. Lisa, you wanna?
Sorry. Can you say that one more time?
What differentiates PS77? Are they known?
I would say differentiates for PS77 is definitely the chess club. The chess team is very strong at PS77. A lot of kids participate in that. Also, I know there's a few other schools out there that also participate in the same chess program as PS77, namely PS33. Also, it's a chess program that goes to a couple different schools throughout Manhattan and Brooklyn. It's called ICN Chess, and it's very well run program. So PS77 is not the only school that does that that chess program, but it is like one of the highlights of the school. And my son participates in that. Other programs, I would say, like, I mentioned there's a debate in 5th grade, there's a 4th grade drama program. There's not really much dance right now, but the music teacher at PS77 is really, really great. And he really brings a lot of joy to the classroom and to the kids. So there's recorders that the 3rd graders play and ukuleles that the 4th and 5th graders play in music. Other things, not really off the top of my head, but it's a great school. We do participate in a couple. We brought back the science fair, which is really kind of more of an independent project for kids starting at 1st grade. And that's in the spring. And right now they are doing one math competition both within the classroom during the day. It's called Continental Math League, CML. And then there's also like a one-off competition called Math Kangaroo that the school is also participating in. So I would say a lot of math and science and chess.
There's another PS77 very specific question. So Lisa, maybe you can put that on the chat and we can move on to another question. But they ask, what is PS77's philosophy to deal with kids who may be introverted? So maybe if you want to say something about that in the chat, but maybe we can go to another question. Okay, this is a good one. My child has a sibling priority at our zone school. We like the school and want our child to attend, but we also want to list G&T programs. If we rank G&T programs first and put our zone school below them, will this jeopardize our chances of getting in at our zone school? It is a popular school that attracts out-of-zone applicants. I can answer that. It's a great question because zoning is a priority, but it's also what the DOE calls an entitlement. So everyone has the right to attend their zone school. There is a caveat to that. It's provided that there is space. So you absolutely need to list your zone school on your application. And if you put, like Hunter had said, if you put a school higher and you get that school, they're going to say, okay, they matched it at this is the highest school on their list, so they're going to go there. And then you'll be taken out of the running for all of the schools, including your zone school you list below. If you change your mind and say, oh, well, no, I really want to go to my zone school later, chances are there will be you have the highest priority under sibling to go there. But if your school is oversubscribed, if it's overcrowded, that is one way that they can deny you entry at your zone school. So, and this person asks or says that their school is very popular and that they do take out of zone students. So if they fill up, even with out of zone students, and you have ranked something higher that you get, you could theoretically lose that zone school spot. So you really rank it in order of true order of preference. If you really want your zone school and you know it's a popular school, you put that first.
But I want to add on to that, though. I don't want people to get the idea that by putting 11 G&T programs in front of your zone school, if you put it 12 and you don't get any of those 11 G&T programs, then you will get your zoned school. So you're not diminishing your chance of that being your backup by putting it lower on your list.
Right, as a backup, yes. But if you are hedging and saying, I'm not sure and I may want to go to my zone school, you might not be able to. So just know really figure out where you want to go if it's a popular zone school. If it's a zone school that has filled up or that doesn't fill up, that has open seats, then you generally don't have to worry and you can make that gamble. But if it's a very, very popular school, you can ask. One way of asking is, has the school ever capped? Meaning they've filled all their seats and they can't take any more. That's something you can ask at the school. Or how many kids out of zone do they take? If it's none, then generally that'll be good. Okay, next. How do you weigh proximity of a school, i.e. 10-minute walk versus 30-minute versus quality?
I mean,
I'll
say something.
Yeah, I was going to say, Craig,
yeah, I'll say something
first.
Because I live literally 2 minutes from my school. Being a block or two or three from your school is very nice. It's very convenient. It also allows for community because there are always kids from my son's grade who are around, who I can do a very quick play date. If I happen to be home on a Saturday afternoon at 2 o'clock and just pick up the phone or put in a WhatsApp group, hey, I'm home, who's around? You can do that. However, I would not discount the quality of the school. If you walk into the school and you say, this is just not the place for my child, this looks horrible, or you're in chat groups and they say, PS, whatever, it's just a horrible experience, you're going to be stuck with that school, or you could be stuck with that school for several years. It's not the easy, you can transfer, but it's not always the easiest thing to do. It's not an easy process to transfer. Depends on other schools if they have capacity. So I would not discount it. You have to take a school that you're going to theoretically be comfortable with for 7 years or 6 years rather, 6 years. So I wouldn't discount it, but it is very nice to be close to your school. What you need to do, what parents need to do, is they need to put down a list of what's important to them, because different things are important to different people. Geography, whether it's a gifted or talented program, the diversity of the school. And there's no judgment. What's important to some families are not important to other families, and that's okay. But what you should do is go through that list and see what is most important, what is second most important, and figure it out from there. But I wouldn't, it's really nice being close by, but I wouldn't discount the quality of the school and the vibe, not just the quality, but just the vibe. If you walk in and the kids look miserable in that school, you don't want your kid to be miserable. So you just have to think about that. So So it's not an easy, there's no answer that I can give you that's a great answer. I don't think any of the panelists can truly answer that, but it's a balancing act, and you just need to be careful.
And I'm going to add to that because I have the exact reverse story. So my kids, I'm in the northernmost part of my very large geographic district, and my kids went to school, elementary school, in the southernmost part of my very large district. And I would drive them. I was lucky enough to be able to drive them. The public transit route would have been even stickier, but that was an hour twice a day, every day, to get them to school. But not only that, I always tell my pre-K parents, that is every lost homework that needs to come back, that every lunchbox you leave, you have to turn around and go do that. That is every chorus concert. That is every parent-teacher conference, if they're ever in person again. It is so much more than just the morning and afternoon commute. You don't realize. And like Craig says, the sense of community, you don't really realize until all the kids' friends are also a half hour away every time you want to get them together. PTA participation, every PTA meeting is far away. So then you feel like you can't participate. What is your morning commute like? Is it going to be on your way to work? Is it going to be out of the way? How will it be if you have to pick them up sick from school? So the commute is not something to discount or take lightly at all. To answer that question, I chose the G&T program. I felt like it was the best fit for my kids. But it was 9 years of a really, really lot of commuting. So it is, Craig's answer was perfect. It's priorities, but it's, please take that commute into consideration for so many more reasons than just morning and afternoon.
And just one more thing to keep in mind is, for those of you who are going through this process for the first time, but you're going to go through it again in a year or 2 years or 3 years with a second child, you have to think about what's going to happen if one child goes to a school here and then another child goes to a school there, and what your life is going to be like. And Deb, I don't know if all of your kids went to the same school. I don't remember. Oh, they did. But I know there are parents in my school that have kids that go to different schools in very different locations. I live in Chelsea, but I know someone who has a kid that goes to Chelsea, and then another kid goes to the Upper East Side. It is not a pleasant life. It's not easy to do. So you just need to think about that as well.
And the older child is going to go to middle school somewhere else.
Right.
So even if they're at the same elementary, they're going to be split at some point. So what is that going to be like, given where they will go to middle and high school too? Next question is, if you have a bad zone school and aren't near the good ones in your district, do you move to another apartment to get into a good school?
Okay, you can go ahead, Yatin.
Look, parents do all sorts of things for their kids. I've done that for my 2 kids. If you're really unhappy about the zone school where you live, many parents do look at where they're going to move to for a zone school that they like. That is not rare at all. I hear it very often. So if that's your decision, that's your right. Zone schools, as Deborah had mentioned earlier, has a very high priorities, somewhat of an entitlement. So, but you need to make a big change. It's a big change, but look, parents do a lot of things for our kids. So go ahead and do that if you're really not happy with your zone school.
Though I would just add one thing to that, and that is that look at your district and how full the schools are. You can ask other parents at schools that you do like, and see if those schools are full. If they're not, and they're taking non-zone kids, then you theoretically can apply out of zone if there's other good schools in your district that you do like. However, if some districts are very full, all their schools are full, and in that case, you definitely need to move, because they're just not letting many, if any, out of zone kids, into the other schools. And usually it's the schools that are the best schools that are most likely to be full.
Switching topics, thoughts on dual language. How can the entire curriculum be covered if the students learn the same lessons twice, first in English and then in the target language? Wouldn't they only cover 50% of the curriculum by the end of the year?
Okay, I'll take that one because I think I'm the only one on this panel that has a dual language experience. So my younger child did not go to a G&T program, as you guys heard from the stats. You know, it's very tough to get a spot. We started at one elementary school, and I didn't think it was the right environment for my daughter, and I chose to move her to a dual language program. There is really no set curriculum. It's very much dependent on the principal, by the teachers that are in the dual language school. My child went to Strongwind, which is on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. The principal has I guess, a strong vision of what they want to do. Teachers, sometimes it's dependent on the staffing, but I would say at the lower grades, they're covering everything, and they, with the exception of your ELA, that is in English, they are doing it in both. You talk to the school that you're interested in, and the way that they teach the two languages vary by grade. Sometimes they'll alternate days. Sometimes they'll do the morning in one language and the afternoon in a different language. You know, there is really no mandated way to do this by the DOE, and a lot of it is driven by the principal and the staff at the school. That's the best thing I can say. But you are getting a really rich curriculum most of the time, and you get the benefit of your child learning or knowing another language.
And my daughter actually did dual language for preschool before she moved over to a G&T program. So, you know, I don't know the elementary schools per se, but they didn't learn the exact same thing in both languages. You know, one day they might have math in English, and another day, my daughter did Mandarin also in dual language. The other day she might have math in Mandarin, for instance. So there isn't really that duplication, but you do, I mean, it is more work and more curriculum to fit in than is probably standard doing dual language, but it's not like it's a full duplication.
How much have G&T programs changed since the city dropped testing for admission?
I'm happy to just add a little bit about what we've noticed at Lower Lab. So my two older kids did take a test to get into Lower Lab. And then my youngest one, who is now in kindergarten, did not have a test. So as it stands right now, third grade and up were tested. Second grade and below has been lottery. So what the teachers reported is that there's more students with a range of ability, a wider range of abilities coming into kindergarten. And what Lower Lab has done to help keep the acceleration up is that there are more TAs and more supports in the lower grades right now, just to make sure that all the kindergartners and first graders are, you know, getting to be on the same page with knowing the sounds of letters, starting to read, building their literacy skills. So it really depends on the way the administration and the principal designates their resources within the school. There's definitely a wider range now of kids coming in. Before, when there was an assessment, kids mostly came in already kind of knowing how to read, or they picked it up very quickly. And now it's a wider range of kids coming in. So I would definitely speak to the principals of the schools that you're interested in on what supports they offer, you know, just to make sure that kids, if there is an acceleration, if they're going to meet that acceleration. So that's a great question, especially for individual schools.
I would just add that we haven't really seen the outcomes yet. So it's a little bit hard to answer. We have a lot of anecdotal evidence about how it's going, but we haven't yet seen the post-COVID, post-testing data from middle school, high school for those kids, but it will be interesting to see. if you have a truly terrible lottery number, how does it work for applying to gifted and talented in first and second grade?
I can say that, I think right now the application is just for kindergarten, and the first and second grade application is coming a little bit later in the school year, in the late winter into the spring. So that's a separate application. But I was going to mention that everyone here, no matter where your kindergartner gets placed next year, you do have another opportunity in first grade and then in second grade again, to try the lottery again. So if it doesn't work out this year and you don't get the school that you wanted, the G&T school or whatever school you wanted, try again next year. So I had my kids both entered lower lab at second grade. So my son, he didn't have a high enough test score at that point before COVID. It was very, very competitive. And then during COVID, a lot of kids left the city, a lot of seats opened up. So when we applied again the second time, a seat was available to him, and that was in first grade going into second grade. So definitely apply again. But that's something to consider, because every parent will decide whether it's worth moving your child, right? Because once they form bonds at their school and in their community, it's hard to break those bonds. So that's an individual choice if you want to apply again, if you think that a certain program is really a right fit for your child. If you want to pursue that, take into consideration, the friendships that you make one year may not last if you're switching to another school for second grade or beyond.
Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to add to that. First and second grade and third grade, and you can actually apply all the way up through fourth grade now for G&T, and they have a different admissions process. So basically, they limit it to kids that have all 3s and 4s on their grades, and so it is a little bit limited, and it's unclear in the future whether they're going to move to just like 4s having priority over 3s, but right now it looks like it's all 3s and 4s. But you can keep applying, and it's definitely worth it to do that if you feel like your kid really needs a G&T seat. And there are openings. First grade classes go from 25 kids up to 32 kids max, and some schools take more kids. We don't know how that's going to work out with the new class size law. But for now, there's an expansion at first grade. So there's a lot of kids that get in at first grade.
I was just going to make that point. Yeah. So for if anyone, I don't know if anybody here has a kindergartner going into first, but you will get this year, they will still have that increase, but we don't know how that will be. In fact, going forward, there could be even fewer seats available with the new class size law. Okay, switching gears a little bit. Great questions about kids with IEPs. If my child, if my son has an IEP, will he have priority to pick the elementary school that I want? And can he still be in a G&T classroom if he's receiving services or an IEP? I'm happy to answer. I don't know how familiar everyone is with the term 2E or twice exceptional, but it is basically when your child has a both gifted designation and requires some sort of special education service or has an IEP. There is no priority per se. Every elementary school has to accommodate, or is supposed to accommodate, a child's IEP. So if your child has an IEP, whether it's in a gifted class, not in a gifted class, the IEP has to be honored according to the law. In terms of twice exceptional, it is not a recognized category in the DOE, and there's a lot of misconceptions about the DOE. Sometimes, as they did with my child, said, well, if your child is doing well academically, they do not qualify for a service, because it's difficult to adhere to both a G&T setting and provide services. So the DOE doesn't like things that are difficult. So they, this was years ago, but they told my son he could not receive services. And I have come to learn that that is highly illegal. We have many, many G&T students who also have an IEP or a 504 plan, which is a one-year plan that addresses occupational therapy or speech therapy or a particular accommodation that that you might need. My son is in high school now, and he has a 504 for the use of assistive technology, and that it will carry through college even. So absolutely, if your child has an IEP or you think they may be in need of services, that should not and must not affect whether or not they are in a G&T classroom. But there is no special priority for if your child has an IEP to get into kindergarten. Anyone want to add? No? Okay.
Yeah, it's important to say that, and maybe you just said this, Deb, and I was trying to type in the chat to answer another question, but some schools try to limit kids that are doing well and take them out of their IEPs. And your child is entitled to that IEP, even if they're in G&T and even if they're making all fours in all their classes, they continue to be entitled to that. And, you need to address that with the principal and the district if that's happening.
We have a district specific question. Best G&T programs in District 20. We looked at this, we were asking around, did we get an answer?
Deborah, I did not. And gosh, there are 32 school districts for all of you, possibly new parents into the system. We talk about school districts like it's the back of our hand, but there are 32 just geographic school districts, and they're all so different. They're different sizes. District 20 is one of the top school districts in terms of academic performance in New York City. It has some really good options. I don't have the schools to share with you, but I wanted to put a plug in for parents that are on Facebook. Please join our Facebook group. There are places, that's a great place to ask these questions, and we have such sharing parents in the community, and they will try to provide answers for you there. So, if I don't have it for you to share tonight, but please join that community and ask your questions and crowdsource that information. So, hey, Deborah, I don't know how many more we have in the submitted questions, and we have like 45 parents with us that some of whom may want to ask questions. In addition to the ones that we're trying to answer in the chat. So how are we doing there?
We're basically done. There were a few questions I skipped that we kind of covered, but they all basically have to do with lottery. So if and ranking, but I think we pretty much covered them.
I think so. So for those of you who want to ask a question, just raise your hand under the reaction button in Zoom. You can raise your hand and we'll just go in order and we'll try our best to answer. I see Christine Jiang. Go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Oh, hi everyone. Sorry, I'm using my wife's account on this. Just a question. How does, for G&T, how does the parent interview factor in? Is there any weight given to that?
I'm not aware. I'll say, I think the evaluation that's taking place now in your pre-K in our public schools, it's just with the child. There is no parent interview that I'm aware of. Now, I have heard, and you guys jump in the first time they started doing it, parents that were in private school, parochial school, would have to speak to someone from DOE Central, or early childhood development expert. And I believe that they did speak to the parent and not the child. But you guys,
yes, that's exactly.
Deborah,
My sister, yes, that's exactly right. It was a phone interview where they asked essentially the same questions that the public pre-K teachers were using to evaluate. And they did not evaluate the child. They just went on the parent interview in that case.
Got it.
I would just say one more thing. I agree with both Yatin and Deborah. And to just reiterate what Hunter said earlier, make sure that you're having conversations with your child's pre-K teacher and you're transparent about, what your goals are for your child. If you think that they're very academically gifted or accelerated, make sure that you tell your teacher we're going to apply and we're thinking about G&T programs so that they can, share feedback with you about what they see and notice of your child, and that it's not, a surprise to them that you're asking for a recommendation through, the central system. Just make sure it's on their radar and make sure that you're having conversations with them about that.
Thank you very much.
Tara Cruz.
Hi, yes. We are moving before the system closes in January. Should we change our address through My Schools, or do we have to go to a welcome center to change it? And thank you.
Are you in a public school pre-K?
No, we are not in a public school pre-K right now.
So do you even have an account? Did you open the My School account?
We did open an account.
Okay,
yes.
You did, and there's an address associated with that already, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so if you want to be sure that it's changed, I would feel more comfortable going to the Family Welcome Center and making sure that your new address is in the system to be used.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Just a pro tip, try and get everything, any changes, anything in writing. The DOE is I don't say notorious for making errors, but known to make errors. Screenshot everything, start the files, and anything you can do that has a paper trail will save you lots and lots of time. So even if you go in person to the Family Welcome Center or have a phone call, follow up in writing, say, just to memorialize, this was our conversation, do that in email. So you have it. It'll save you a lot of headaches down the road.
Thanks, Deborah. Next, we have Lillian.
Hi.
Hi.
I just had a question based on your experience, and it seems like all of you have extensive experience. Do you know what kind of lottery number a non-sibling would have to have in order to get into a citywide G&T or a district G&T?
I don't think we have actual stats. I mean, look, and Anderson accepts 50 kids, I think. So the citywide G&Ts are tough without sibling. And, it's on the My School. You look up and it says like the siblings all got a spot. Then it went to some of the non-sibling priority. So, it's tough. I think for the first round, just to be honest, the larger schools like Nestem and TAG probably be a little easier than an Anderson. But the district ones, it's going to vary a great deal. You may have multiple district ones, and depends on how popular they are in your district. We don't have any statistics really to share with you.
Okay.
It's dynamic every year. It's not static. So year to year, it just changes so much depending on how you rank. You might have a lot of folks you don't know what the birth rate was on this side of the district and how many parents are looking to go to that school. And with all the changes since COVID, it really has varied pretty wildly.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much.
We didn't know about lottery numbers. Like we didn't have access to lottery numbers before, so it's kind of hard.
Before Place did this, actually, I want to make all these parents know that actually Place had a huge role in making the DOE publish the lottery numbers. It was a big thing for high schools a few years ago, before it's a bigger thing now for kindergartens. But we found out that lottery numbers were being used, and we started asking parents to FOIL it. It's a freedom of information, and we emailed the DOE, and I guess enough parents emailed them to make it such a burden that they just decided, let's just publish it as part of the profile. So we couldn't do everything, but we wanted parents to have the transparency and the preparation to know where you stack with other parents applying. So
Great. Thank you so much.
you're welcome. I don't see any other hands up. I just
there's a question in the chat. Where exactly do you see your number on My Schools?
it should be in your child's profile. So when you go into My School, you have your child's name, and there should be like an edit profile. I'm just thinking about from a desktop. Once you click into that edit profile, you should see a lot of parameters, and somewhere down the list, you should see like a random number, and this long hexadecimal thing is your lottery number.
Random application number, yeah.
Okay.
I think. And you'll know it when you see it.
Yeah. Tara, did you have another question?
I do. I'm so sorry. Are the family welcome centers open during the Christmas winter break or no?
I don't think so. They're open tomorrow. I'm sure they're open tomorrow, so you should give them a call.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Yeah. If there are no more questions, we're at 9:25. I want to first thank all the parent leaders that joined us tonight. Thank you, Deborah, Hunter, Craig, and Lisa, for taking time out of your evening. We are all parents with kids, and we want to help other parents. And I hope this was informative for you. Join our Facebook group, subscribe to our newsletter to just to start learning about and paying attention to things that happen to our schools and what's happening in education in New York City as well as around the country. And you can do that on our website. And I hope this was informative, and we'll continue to do this to help fellow parents navigate the system as we have. And have a great night. Go back to your family. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.